Hello, my name is Ismirlian and I'm the Conveying Product Engineer here at Novatec. Today I'm here to talk to you about valves and additional accessories. Besides your normal conveying equipment like your vacuum pumps, your vacuum receivers, there is a number of other components to your system that allows it to function. And I'm going to walk through several of those in several different iterations. We're going to start from this side. So the first items that you'll probably notice are the ones that are not on the table because that kind of stands out, right? Here we have what we call a vacuum lance or a wand. This is a means of picking up plastic material from your source if it's a Gaylord or a mobile bin or a drum, anything that has an open top or a port for you to plug this in at the bottom. What this does is it allows you to regulate the material flow going through the lance when you're picking it up. You have to achieve the appropriate pickup velocity. In order to pick up that material, you need to have vacuum. So what this does is it actually carburetes. It reduces or increases the amount of air you're allowing into this end of the lance, where you actually have your hose here, but you have this outer sleeve. This outer sleeve is what's going to allow air to go down into the material while material sitting all around this, so that you can have that free-flowing air go in and pick up the material back up into the center tube, into your conveying line and down for the rest of the system. So you're going to be adjusting this in order to change that kind of vacuum in that pickup. Now this one is a stainless steel version. We offer these primarily for situations where you need stainless steel contact with your material, or if you have abrasive material like glass-filled nylons or mineral-filled. Now the one next to it is a slightly larger unit. This is what we have for our 3-inch. That was a 2-inch. This one's actually one of our aluminum units, and this is what we usually supply as standard. The aluminum is of the same design. You have your air carburetor at the top and allows you to pull your everyday resin. Now, what if you don't have a Gaylord box, or you have a central located material source, like in a surge bin or a silo, or maybe you're pulling from a drying hopper or some other means? We have a number of accessories that actually allow you to do that besides using a lance. We have what we call our takeoff boxes. The takeoff boxes allow us to mount vacuum probes. Probes are just a compact version of a lance, but it's hard mounted into your system. And those are actually right behind me. So the one right here is our standard VTB or vacuum takeoff box. That is typically used for your everyday drying hoppers or buffer hoppers that have a nice square pattern, round opening. We have a variety of different sizes and patterns available with a different number of ports. Like this one right here is a 3-port with 1 blocked off, giving you the capability of having 2 or 3 ports. You can also operate it with just a single, with the plans for future expansion. Now, this takeoff box has a filter on the back of it. Now this filter provides makeup air into the material so that when you're pulling the material out of the takeoff box using one of the probes, it allows you to more freely pull that material. Now, it doesn't have to be filtered. We have an alternate if you have, let's say, a moisture sensitive material and you're trying to convey this in a closed loop situation where you're recirculating air from your pickup to your pump, back to the back side of your pickup point pump, and so on and so forth. We actually have adapters as well that allow you to replace that filter and plug in and do a hard plumbing or silicone hose plumbing so that you can do that recirculation and feed more dry air into the back of the takeoff box instead of the ambient in the air. Another takeoff box before I go into the actual vacuum probes is what we call our MBT, our modular bolt together takeoff. It is actually this unit underneath this accessory here. So what it is actually a square box that you have underneath a surge bin or a silo with a standard 12x12 opening and associated pattern. So these are actually stackable, so they're modular. That's why it's in the name. So you can actually stack these and have 2 ports, 4 ports, 6 ports, and so on. And allow you to rotate those 90 degrees from each other, 180 degrees, 270. This gives you the ability to pull from those larger bulk containers. Those are available in aluminum or stainless steel, where the VTBs are standard as stainless. Now, we can jump into the vacuum probes that actually connect to these takeoff boxes. First, I'm going to show you our standard ambient air carbureted vacuum probe. As you can see, we have a sleeve here with some mesh that allows us to pull air into the tube from this point outside of the takeoff box. So this is actually inside. Unfortunately, everything's upside down, but if you bear with me, this is going to be oriented in that way. We actually have this side's up, so imagine that box rotated and this mounted this way, but it would actually mount into the box and bolt up to that pattern. So you have the carburetor on the outside, so you can easily adjust and pull ambient air to regulate your vacuum and pick up velocities. Now, these are available in both aluminum and stainless steel, depending on the resin you're conveying. Now we have another style, which we call our dry air convey probe. Now what this does is it actually, instead of regulating the ambient air on the outside, we are regulating the material flow into the tube with an open air inlet at the end that's pulling from the makeup air side of the takeoff box. So you'll be able to insert this into the same style box. As long it can have the filter on the back if you're not worried about moisture regain, but you can also have it with your closed loop adapter on the back, so that way you can accomplish a closed loop system. Now this was just a sleeve in sleeve adjustment, but you would be able to rotate this and the opening would change. Now those are your standard pickup points, but let's say you have a situation where you want to be able to purge your line. Let's say you have an extremely high vertical where you would tend to plug or slug your line if you tried to pull, or you have that moisture sensitive material that you don't want sitting in the line while your process is dealing with the batch you just pulled. So what you would do is you would want to purge that. Now you can do it in this setup. You can have your takeoff box, your vacuum probe, and then attach an additional valve, which we would call our EPV, which is actually our external proportioning valve, but also used as our external purge valve. Now this valve is actually right behind me, and this is a single out dual inlet. So in this situation of purge, you would actually have the bottom line connected to this probe. Now the lines are not the same, but please bear with me. They'll be connected this way, and you would feed your material into the tube. Now from there, as it's conveying, it'll actually drop and go down to the outlet and continue feeding the line. But as soon as you're done loading your fill of material and you start your purge sequence, the valve will switch. And then you're no longer pulling from this side, you're gonna be pulling from this side. And this will either be filtered or this will be connected back to your closed loop convey header, which is feeding you that drier air. And that will actually provide clean air with no material flow being entered and actually purge out that line. The material will empty out because you're not feeding any more material. In the case of proportioning, it's actually the same way. You would actually have this mounted to the inlet of your receiver. You would have your virgin material on the bottom, and you would have your regrind on the top. And as long as your controller is able to operate it, it will allow you to switch those and continue feeding material through both. Now, it doesn't necessarily have to be just virgin and regrind. It could be any mix of material that you're just trying to blend into your receiver. Since we're on the topic of purging, there's actually another accessory that will accomplish the same task, but take up a lot less space. It'll actually combine the features from those different components and put them into one. So it'll take our VTB, it'll take our vacuum probe, it'll take our dry air adapter for the back of the box, and it'll also incorporate our EPV or external purge valve. Now this product is our VPT, our vacuum purge takeoff. And I actually have one behind me that I'll be able to actually pick up and show you in the proper orientation. So here is our vacuum purge takeoff. As you can see, significantly smaller than all those items combined. It is a single box, single outlet, single dry air entry or ambient entry, depending on how you have this set up, that can be used with your drying hopper or a buffer hopper. It allows you to connect up to a 4-inch ID with a 4 3/4 bolt pattern on the inside, or a 6x6 pattern as well. And if it does not fit that, we also offer some adapters as well. We are an in-house fabrication shop. Now this is very compact, and you're looking at it, you're probably wondering, well, all right, well, how do we do the material metering? How do we do the purge? You do see that we have one air cylinder on the outside here, and we have a solenoid that's controlling it. So we are accomplishing this via material metering. We have no valve on the top, but we're using an air cylinder to meter the material. And we're able to do that because we have an adjustment screw at the end that goes into this air cylinder and allows us to adjust it or adjust the stroke. Now, I'm going to show you the inside of what that looks like. So here we have a safety release mechanism. So you can only open or operate this valve with the door shut and this connector in place. So I'm going to disconnect that, and I'm going to put that down. And now from here, we have a locking mechanism at the bottom. So it's a twist nut. And you can slide that out, and now we can open it. Now with it open, you can see that we have a shutoff plate here, and it's actually fully extended. If it's right up to the edge, you're fully closed. So you're going to be right up against the door, so it's not letting any material through. But once you're actuating it and you're allowing it to feed material, so you're going into your load sequence, the valve will actually push in and it'll bottom out against that screw to only provide what that looks like, almost 3/4 of an inch of space for the material to flow through. And that's what we're doing to meter the material flow into it while we're feeding dry or ambient air, depending on your setup, into this to regulate your vacuum or your pickup velocities. You can also see that we have a drain out on the back. So when the valve is not loading and you have to empty out the hopper and you have this shut down, you don't have any material being pulled from it, being called for it, you can actually drain out your hopper without opening anything other than this slide mechanism here. So you can open it with a 2-inch tube on it. We do offer options that give you larger openings all the way up to 3-inch to drain out your hopper faster. Always make sure this is shut when you're filling your hopper. We have another version. It's actually something that we introduced recently, and it's our dual port VPT, or our VPT2. Now, it's the same functionality as this unit here, but it allows you to have 2 ports come off in a compact fashion. So here, I'll pick this up, and as you can see, there is some similarities to this. Now I'm going to flip it upside down just to show you here. So you have your ambients and you have your material outlets. Now this time we have 2 air cylinders. Now the 2 air cylinders allow you to feed material to both sides. One at a time, both at a time, separate pumps, just separate receivers. Now, how are we doing that? Well, we actually have a divider inside, making this literally 2 different compartments for 2, as if you have 2 VPTs on the bottom. Now this is also standard as stainless steel contact and has the option for the larger drain out ports on the back. Now that we've finished up purge, the actual conveying of the material from your pickup point, there are a few more accessories that may show up right before your pickup point, and they're right behind me. One to my right is what we call an angel hair trap. It will actually go in line. As you can see, it matches the pattern on our MBT, so it will work ideally with, let's say, your silo or your surge bin. And it'll allow us to capture any material that may already have angel hair in it. Let's say someone filled your silo too quickly and generated that angel hair, or it came from the manufacturer in that rail car that way, or that bulk truck that way. So this will allow us to capture that angel hair before it even gets to your pickup point or further in that process. So anything downstream, you can focus on making your product, as long as your conveying system is not generating it as well. So this is something useful to have if you have those sensitive resins like PEs, and it gives you access on the outside. Now, in order to service that angel hair trap, you have to stop the material flow up top or wait for that chamber to be fully emptied. Well, if you don't want to wait, we have our own rack and pinion slide gate that we produce in-house, and that is what is right here. This unit is a carbon steel standard, stainless steel optional slide gate, rack and pinion style, so you have a hand wheel with a gear setup to ease that shutoff for your system. So this has the same SB or silo pattern, 12-inch internal inside opening, and we also do offer a manual gate as well, where you push a plate in order to shut it off. We'd definitely say this is a little bit easier to manage. It does come with a seal on the back. Everything, since this is the open end where the gate is passing through, we do have a silicone seal that allows us to make sure that plastic material isn't consistently leaking from your system. Now that we've covered the pickup points, how do you pull that material through your system into your receiver? Well, you may know station valves or loading valves. These accessories are usually up and out of the way, something you don't typically see or need to do maintenance on. These valves allow you to pull air to a designated point from a collective header that's being attached to your vacuum pump. That way you're able to share your vacuum between multiple stations individually. So the valves behind me right here, first one is our traditional station valve. It is a T valve that would be mounted in your vacuum header this way, and then you have your drop to your receiver. We have a plunger in here that sections off this section of the chamber. So when you're not pulling to this station, it is sealed and vacuum is maintained in the header to another station valve where it is needed. But when it is calling for material and this station is told to load, the valve will open, allow vacuum to be pulled in from this particular chamber, and pull that material into the vacuum receiver. Now, this one is 1.5 inches, available with 24 volt or 120 volt, and we do also offer 24 volt AC and some low wattage alternatives. Now, you'll also see behind me there's a larger variant. That's our 3-inch. Now, I'm just showing you that because we offer a bunch of different line sizes readily available in stock. So we have 1.5 inch, 2-inch, 2.5, 3-inch, and 4-inch readily available. We do have some off-line sizes that we typically don't use, but we have supplied, such as 2.25, 3.5, or even larger. Now, these station valves are somewhat, I want to say desired because they actually give you a failure indicator. If you notice on the back of the air cylinder, we have this protrusion. Is it really necessary? No, it is not, but we have that there so that we can have an external indicator of the positioning of this valve. Right now, since the valve is shut, because this is spring loaded to spring shut in case of failure, this protrusion is extended. Now, when it is operating, it'll be down, and you'll actually be able to visibly see if the valve is operating correctly. Now, that can give you two indications. One, your air cylinder has failed, so if it's operating correctly or not, whether it be in one direction or the other. But it could also, if you still have a leak, even though the solenoid failed in the proper direction, if the spring has failed. So very good to have, even though we also have an LED indicator on our solenoids. Now, in addition to the regular station valves, we do offer another style for situations where, let's say you have vacuum lock in your system because you have a higher vacuum capable pump and the station valves too close together where they don't have time to allow that vacuum to dissipate between cycles. Well, we have what we call our external fill valve, which is typically on our lid-mounted receivers, lid-mounted valve receivers. So our VRXs, historically our VRH or our VRM, which is our hinge lid units. Now you'll see that it's almost identical to that valve because it's identical to that valve. The only difference is we're attaching a tube stub to the bottom. So we're making this valve, instead of lid mounted, we're making it remote again. Well, why would we do that? Well, one thing that the station valve does not give you is an ambient vacuum break from the system. What this does is, you can see on the back, we have ports on the back that allow us to dissipate the vacuum at the receiver more quickly. It allows us to just have ambient flood in, or there is another option where we can actually have a vent loop port, or as we call it. It's one of the accessories that we have on our vacuum receivers that will draw air, not from the air around you, but let's say from a tube that goes through the discharge of the receiver into your destination, where let's say that's already a dryer. So you can actually pull air from there, bring it up to this valve, and it'll plug into this back plate. That's where you will get your air from there. Now that would also equalize the pressure from the vacuum chamber and the dryer so that it will more readily discharge material into your drying hopper. That's if you don't have a VRX or VRH or a VRM receiver on top of that drying hopper already. Now, we do also offer it with a back plate that is solid. We typically would try to use those in situations where you have blowback on your receiver. And you could also use the vent loop backing plate as well for blowback situations, since you are isolating air and allowing it to pulse at full blowback. When we go back into closed loop systems, now we've already gone past the vacuum header with the station valve. Now we're back at the pump. The pump is pulling, but you want to have a closed loop system because you're pulling dried air through your conveying lines, but you want to be able to recircuit so you can maintain that air going through to minimize the amount of moisture that's going to be accumulated in those lines with the material. We have a valve that allows us to do that because we are not always going to be pulling material with this pump in a closed loop fashion. You may want to switch to ambient for a different material source or station that doesn't need it. So we actually use our same external proportioning and external purge valve in a situation where it mounts to the exhaust of our pump. So we include a threaded adapter that will mount to our silencers. Now what this is doing is actually providing air in the opposite direction of what we would normally do with our vacuum pumps. With our purge valves, with our proportioning valves. So we're actually going to be feeding air in from the typical outlet, which is now the inlet for air passage, and we'll feed it to one of these two tubes. One of these will have a mesh screen in order to allow this thing to vent to ambient, or go into a collective exhaust header that will be pumped out of the room. The other stub will actually be feeding your closed loop line header, where you're pushing the air into that header in order to be fed back around to your pickup point to close that loop. Now, in addition to that valve that goes on the exhaust of our pumps, which we call our DSV or discharge selection valve, there is one other valve that would be needed for a closed loop system that I do not have here to show you. And it's what we call our CLR, our closed loop relief. Whenever you're putting air into a chamber and you're actually pushing it out of a positive displacement blower, you will have a tendency to create pressure. Now, we don't want to pressurize this closed loop header and push that air into the dryers, where we're actually going to cause some conveying issues, whether it be premature material push out through the takeoff boxes, pushing dust through the system, or even feeding that air directly up into the dryer. What this closed loop relief valve will do is it'll allow us to alleviate that pressure if there is no demand for it. When you are calling for demand in a closed loop, this valve will shut, It's actually a mechanical valve, so you don't even have to worry about wiring or pneumatic components or utilities in order to operate it. And it will shut because you'll be generating vacuum from the vacuum side of the pump. Now, those are all the valves and accessories that I have here to show you today, but they're not the only ones that we have. As I also mentioned, we do make adapters that allow us to adapt some of our normal accessories to other equipment, to competitors or to custom equipment as well. And we have that capability and will be more than willing to quote and provide for it. We also have additional accessories that will be used specifically for other products, like our vacuum receivers, where we could add knife gate discharges, or we have capacitors, remote capacitor switches, or a number of other options. So if you have any questions, whether it be for the individual accessories or the ones that could be for other equipment, please feel free to reach out to your local representative, our internal sales reps here at Novatec, or visit our website at www.novatec.com for more information, data sheets, and even manuals. Thank you for watching.